Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for joining us in person, for joining online. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Annette, everybody that is here helping support. And again, we're on our third session of the Lojong, some exploration of Lojong or mind training. I am going to show a short video from Rinpoche tonight. A lot of the videos I want to show pertaining to this class, we're going to show at the retreat in Lunin in early June. So if you'd like to go deeper with meditations related to this and things, then we'll have some time out there, which will be, I'm really looking forward to. And so thank you for joining. So let's take a moment again. This is another wonderful gap in our day, a gap of space. And what's helpful about the space is because this is also about mind training, Lojong, okay? But another way is when you're thinking about mind training, it's also related to, as I'm trying to train my mind and transform it into something glorious, something that's more functional than it is, in a hugely beneficial way for more beings. But so I can get prepared, I can prepare myself for death, which is definitely coming. And so a lot of times when you're in a situation, and we've been talking about suffering the first couple of weeks, when suffering shows up, and it will always show up for us as long as we're in samsara. And when it does, how's your mind? So if you feel like your mind is spacious and peaceful and it's working really well for you, great, you should probably be able to teach this class, like you know, but most of us, it shows up and we're a little bit out of balance, not performing as well as we'd like to. And if you're dying at that moment, right, really not helpful, really not helpful. And it can be very scary for you. And so these are ways we get our mind ready, that we get our mind ready. And one great way to think about as well is to set a good motivation for whatever we're doing. So when I set a gap or a space, you have many little deaths during the day. This is another way to think. Excuse me. Many little deaths, little transitions. Death is just a bigger transition. The death of moving out of this body, out of this form. Okay? But we have many little ones that can prepare us. You know, there's always like a beginning of something and then an end of that activity. I noticed today I was on dealing with a lot of emails today. You know, I have times where I'm like catching up with emails and different things. So it was kind of like each one going through, did I need to do something more? Could I finish it and delete it? Could I finish that? You know, and then suddenly there was a stop where I kind of felt I want to move my body, when you have something to drink, you know, and there's another little gap. So you can watch your mind all day long in these gaps. Use the gaps. Instead of we mindlessly go through activities, you know, and then let's say you're on your computer and then the phone activates, right? Then you look at your phone and then you decide whether to engage, take the call, take the text, whatever's happening, deal with it, or no, this is what I'm doing, you know. But then we quickly switch or transition if you decide to take the phone, right? But you missed a little gap there of like a little, again, motivation for the phone call, and another little space of one ending. So if we get used to using those transitions all the time, more and more mindful of the transitions, right? Then you can keep layering your motivation in there again and again, layering the what's my attitude for taking the call, or mindfulness of people that have poor, they might say poor time management skills, people that tell me they're really disorganized, they can't get anything done. It goes along with a lot of different activities because as soon as the phone goes off when you're doing your emails, then they attend to the distraction. So, and distraction is kind of the nature of samsara right now. I mentioned this in last week. Samsara is really loud, I said, because of all the distractions. I find it deafening at times, meaning, you know, it's destroying my, like literally, like sometimes I'm in places and I'm thinking, This is like for now, and this is a culture in Amsterdam that I've learned and other places I've lived where you have a lot of tourists here. It's the nature. You get a beautiful city. It's one of the nicest cities, I think, personally. So there's tourists here a lot of the year, not just 2 months, a lot of the year. And I've lived in places like that where there were just lots of tourists, and especially if you go to certain areas. So sometimes you have to go to one of those areas, you know, and I was recently in an area like that and I forgot. And then I was suddenly in the area and I thought, oh, uh-oh. But, you know, have a little bit of like heightened. So again, there is a little bit of your natural protection, right? But there's also, if you're practicing some mindfulness, there's all these sentient beings I can serve here. There's more sentient beings here. So that means for me, I need to be a little bit more mindful, to be maybe number one, careful not to bump into anyone, to be here, to be mindful of the bicycle lanes. Yeah, maybe there's somebody that needs help. I'm not sure how I can help, but maybe there's somebody. So again, a little bit more extension of other than me, right? And then it opens up some space around me where I don't feel so like, I don't want to be here right now. But I also find sometimes it a little bit takes my energy. It's tiring, but it's also loud for me. For some reason, I spend a lot of time alone, quiet, often in retreat. So it's very loud at times. And then I'll remove myself finally from the space and be like, whoo, what was that just went by? So we have all these transitions. So the more, and a nice exercise this week is really practicing more with that basic mindfulness of, so again, I tend to not grab the distraction. If I'm doing email, this is my time to do email, let's say, or something you're doing on the computer, you're finishing your banking thing, whatever you're doing. And then the phone comes in. I'm not doing my phone right now. I want to finish this. This is my time to do this. And then half an hour later, I take a break. And then later in the day when I need to, then I look at the phone and be like, okay, yeah, now I need to answer these. You know, but I have a transition. So once again, it's what's my attitude for answering these? What's my attitude for showing up for the computer? So again, that motivation. So we're going to take a moment just thinking about your motivation for the class right now. There's a new beginning, the class, new activity for yourself. So you yourself directing your energy in a positive way. Set that positive motivation that maybe you get something from some more information about Lojong that will help your mind and your life to best prepare you for death and to best prepare you every day in your life to have the most balanced, uplifting experience with meaning, with wonderful meaning in your life that will help you reach a place where you can benefit all living beings. What if you direct your mind in that way or something similar? Take a moment right now to set that intention. And I'm going to share my screen so we can do some of the prayers together. Just let me know if there's something you can't see. And so to, again, help us put the mind in the right direction, we will start with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. We'll read 3 times. And again, thinking of the Buddha in the space in front. as if there's an actual virtuous friend there, someone you may consider inseparable from your own teacher, or the highest manifestation, the greatest manifestation of your own wisdom, compassion, loving kindness, just there to help you get to that free, spacious experience of the Buddha mind. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When supreme amongst humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, savior, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, to the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any unwholesome actions, engage in perfect wholesome actions, subdue one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So we'll just read this next verse slowly, just reflecting on any understanding we have of emptiness. A star, a defective view, a butter lamp flame, an illusion, a dewdrop, a water bubble, a dream, lightning, a cloud. See all causative phenomena like this. By these merits may transmigratory beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the enemy of faults, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. 4 immeasurables. So sending these prayers out to, not only are they immeasurable, the prayers themselves of immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, but sending them out to immeasurable living beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that knows no suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of attachment and hatred for those held close and distant. The 7-limb prayer. I prostrate reverently with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I confess all my negative actions and downfalls collected from beginningless time. I rejoice in the virtues of ordinary beings and Aryas. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for transmigratory beings. I dedicate my own and others' virtues to great enlightenment. Short mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Radam Indalagam Nirata Yaki. And the refuge in bodhicitta. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Sangye chodan zogi jonam bhajan chubaju jagdikya suchi dagi chiningi bezo nam hidro la pincher sangye druparsho sangye chodan zogi jonam bhajan chubaju jagdikya suchi dagi chiningi bezo nam hidro Drola Pincher Sange Drup Arsho. I just want to show briefly a short, I think it's about 5 minutes, a video of Rinpoche talking a little bit about Lojong. Let's hope this stuff.
Beneficial to all the best life, makes the life best. Okay. So Lojong, thought transformation, Lojong, from beginning of Lamrim, the root of the path to enlightenment or correctly falling virtue, from there up to omniscient mind.
On Zoom, we can actually hear the video.
Lojong thought transformation, Lojong, from beginning of Lamrim, the root of the path to enlightenment or correctly falling virtue. From there up to omniscient mind, or up to the whole Lojong thought transformation, all. But there's a particular Lojong, the Lamrim and Lojong. So all that previous is Lojong, Lamrim, great power to enlightenment. But now the particular Lojong from Lamrim, so the particular they utilize the obstacles, misfortune, obstacles, any obstacles, and you utilize in path of enlightenment. It's like poison transforming into medicine, kaka transforming kaka into gold, like that. So transform poison into medicine, like that. Yeah, like that. So really, utmost need for your life. They, all that thing, what we call obstacle, dharma, to practice dharma. Oh, the misfortune, black magic, there's nothing working, everything will stop. Then you see, everything is there. Then by practicing the water lojong, the particular lojong program, by practicing that you utilize in the path to enlightenment, in the path to happiness of all that sentient being. So that not just temporary, ultimately the enlightenment of the sentient being. You understand? Like that. So then Kathori. Yes, that's very important, needed, so important. Because otherwise your life is very luxury, comfortable, then Dharma doesn't happen. Other one is so much trouble, depression, again unable to practice. You understand? So much luxury, comfort, doesn't remember that, remember that. Then your life is sort of distracted and doesn't get practice Dharma. And your life is depression, some, I don't know about the depression or some, obstacles. Then again, difficult to practice Dharma because the mind is overwhelmed by problems. You understand? Like that. So the time to practice Dharma is almost very hard to anything. You see, you understand? Like that. You have to understand why need Lojong, thought transformation. You understand? You have to understand the need. Otherwise, the West life then is granted, and then finish. Then one day, sooner or later, gone. Your opportunity lost, gone. You see, like that.
Okay. Can everyone online on the screen hear me? Okay, thank you. Thank you. That worked. So it's just a short clip of Rinpoche. And so I did mention before, we watched some other clips. We're going to see better ones, longer ones. I shouldn't say better, at the retreat on this topic. The key is I showed some in some other classes and on the weekend, the Karma weekend, a couple weekends ago, some of the older videos of Rinpoche where he was clearing his throat a lot. His voice doesn't have this, what's the word I want to use? Because this is a video from what we would call post-stroke, when he manifested a stroke, this video. So the ones before that, there was a lot of throat clearing. Some of you may remember if you saw Rinpoche some years ago. And then when he had the stroke, after the stroke manifestation, he started teaching completely differently. And almost to the point where you hear the urgent feeling in his voice, to the point where some of us, when we saw him in person after the stroke manifestation, when he started teaching again, some of you online may remember this. He, if you saw Rinpoche teaching, it was a little frightening for some of us. Like the voice was almost, you know, it just sounded a very different quality. There was no more throat clearing anymore. That finished. And I think it was, a lot of us joked it was just a device Rinpoche would use to kind of weed people out that weren't necessarily disciples. But what happened after the stroke, it seemed like the message was, we've had all these teachings from Rinpoche. You can watch countless ones online that still exist. You know, very different than getting it in person, but still just as good, and just almost as good. And it just sounded like he said, you've had all the teachings and there's an urgency now to just put it into practice and do it. That we're kind of running out of time is the feeling I get. So not only are you running out of time in your own life, like we don't know when death is coming, it's definitely coming. But as we know, our planet's a little bit running out of time. You know, and so right now, and it was interesting, Rinpoche saying, we either have it a little bit too comfortable, which a lot of us in our cultures do. We want a certain level of comfort. We're used to that. We like that. We're attracted to that. We set up a structure around our whole self so that we can have that pleasure and that comfort. Why not? Right? But then what happens is when we're that comfortable, then everything's directed into maintaining that comfort or having more of that comfort. And then the other section is you have no comfort. And then suddenly a problem arises, as what we're looking at in Lojong, a problem comes up, an obstacle, you know, and we don't know how to use it properly. So Rinpoche is saying that there's always going to be these problems. And then as a result of that, we start suffering and getting depressed. And then you're so depressed and miserable, you can't practice either. So isn't that our lives? Isn't that what happens for most of us? So just think, so this is your preparation for death. You have to really think about, what's your balance? You need some level of comfort to practice, but is that all I'm really spending? Like, how many hours a day am I spending supporting that? And we spend a lot of hours a day doing it. So when you're really looking at the formal death meditations, under the first root heading is, and what are the main, there's a 9-point death meditation, some of this traditional way we meditate on death and dying. And how are they sectioned out? How are they divided up? 9 points. Anybody remember? Anybody online? Anybody here? 9-point death meditation. What comes to mind?
Death is certain.
Death is certain. Okay, so, but how are they divided? There's 3 roots. Okay, and under each root, there's 3 reasonings that bring you to a conclusion, a resolution. Okay, so we have 3 roots. Number 1 is death is certain. It's the first root. Number 2 is what? Anybody remember?
You don't know when it will happen.
The
Time when?
the time is uncertain. Okay, so the time of death is uncertain. We don't know when we're going to die. And the third root, what do you remember?
You can't take anything
Right, some
with
people
you.
are saying, so when they unmute, they can't be heard.
Yes.
Can we put them up? Because some people are answering.
yes,
Oh, let's
yes.
turn this up.
Yes, that's what we have to do. Can you
So,
please help to
yeah,
turn it on?
Yeah.
No problem. So, I think I saw this signal here.
Yes.
When I press this button.
There we go. Yeah, so just turn it up.
Oh, yes, yes.
There we go.
I have to hold it for
Ah,
Okay, that's good.
no. It's
That's good.
not working today.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yes,
enough.
thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Okay. So, sorry, those of you, somebody unmuted. Third route of the death meditations?
You can't bring anything with you.
Well, the third route is actually nothing really benefits you at the death time other than your Dharma practice, your spiritual practice. That's what's going to show up. So again, death is certain, time of death is uncertain, and what most benefits you is your Dharma practice. Thank you. No, so under death is certain, there's three routes, three reasonings. Three reasonings. What do you remember? You guys should know this. But if not, we're going to learn it right now. Okay, we're going to go over it right now. This is really important.
From
This
what
is
do we
standard.
need to know this?
The three, sorry.
When did we got this then?
No, sorry, I didn't do it in here, but some people have been at other classes. So, but no, this is perfect. So in the death classes, we do have a weekend coming up on that. Then I'm going to go over more. But basically through a wonderful poem called Heart Spoon, but it's also about taking the heart spoon, the pith of how you need to practice and how we need to think about our lives to get ready for death. But so under each route, there's three reasonings, and under death is certain. What are the three reasonings that people remember that have had this course before? Don't worry if you haven't, not to worry. Three reasonings. You can unmute if you know, or
I do not know this format of the 9 points.
what format do you know? I do not know another format, so
I'm sorry.
we're gonna get this into you, Dragos. You will learn. You will learn that. Okay, this is number one. What, anybody? Okay. There's no power in the universe that will stop. Death is certain, death is happening. No power in the universe that will stop death. So what you do is when we have more time, the death weekend, you do meditations on these slowly, again and again and again. You go over and over. There's different ways that we do it. I'll bring up different examples during that weekend. Second reasoning, under death is certain. Second reasoning is every moment you're closer to death. Every moment. So just imagine you're sitting right now. Notice your breathing. There's an inhalation. There's an exhalation. Technically, that's a breath, I would say. So you're another breath closer to death. These are ways you can think. You're another inhalation closer. You're another exhalation closer. Okay. We're right now another Tuesday closer to death. Another afternoon, evening, closer to death. Another sunny day closer. Another meal closer. Another Dharma course closer. Another on and on and on. Another spring closer. Another May closer. So these are meditations you can do, and you can do this daily. You're on the metro, you're on the tram, you know, I'm another ride closer. And my ride, I'm closer. Every moment I'm closer to death. That's how it is. So that's number two. Slowly you think about like you were dropped out of an airplane without a parachute. That's our birth. Our life is the falling. All the events swimming around, falling past us like that. We definitely will land. The bottom is our death. It's definitely going to happen. Nothing you can do to stop it. There's no magic pill like that. You can think like that. Okay. Then we come to the third one. And the third one is there's very little time to practice Dharma. We spend very little time in formal Dharma practice. So this is the point I wanted to get at is how much time are you spending every day on your leisure and pleasure and comfort? We spend a lot of time on that. Whether it's just what kind of clothes you want to wear that day, how's your hair look that day, you know. Today I was another moment closer of putting a moisturizer on my body. You know, I notice things like you just think of how much time have I spent doing that on this body that's going. Now, granted, you're certainly going to do some of these things. Do you spend too much time doing? You know, we all know people in different, whatever your emphasis is, how many people decorate their homes, how much time you spend getting the perfect this and the perfect that. And I had a friend who, in the last few years, she built a new home for herself, a grand house. She lives alone. She built this incredible house. She spent years thinking about it, plotting out where, getting the property, getting the builders, the contractors. You know what that's like, how much that takes, right? Some of us have been involved in, we used to do it at Dharma centers. Like, I know it's like unbelievable, eats up every ounce of energy. She spent all this stuff for her own home. And then she built it. It's quite glorious, right? Nothing wrong with that. The only thing wrong is if you're attached to it, right? Anyway, she built this beautiful home. She said to me on the phone, something about the house. And I said, well, I'm really happy it's finished. I'm so happy you can live and enjoy. I said, please enjoy. She goes, yeah, I might just sell it and build something else.
Huh?
I might just sell it and build something else. She said, like, this was like what her time was spent up with. And she's a Dharma person that could, but all that time spent. So some people, that's something they get totally enmeshed in. And then what happens is you're dying and you go, I should have practiced. Why didn't I, the teacher told me to read these books or to do this. So we get two. So you can think about that, of how much time. And then the other part is sometimes we suffer so much. We're suffering so much. We're not using the mechanisms to dismantle our delusions. And I'm just repeating habits that continue to get me into the same situation. I got all these calls, and many of you, I'm sure, were calling each other during COVID. So during our quarantine, that's when things start going bad in your world. That's when people reach out to Dharma centers, to spiritual teachers. That's when people want to go see the priest when their partner gets an ill, diagnosis of some illness, or you get something. So COVID, for some of us, it was like retreat. So some people are used to being alone and kind of suddenly had that space and time because you didn't have to go into work, or you weren't traveling, or you weren't, whatever the thing was. It could be kind of a retreat, but a lot of people had other things. It was difficult being home, quarantined with your family, and not having outlets, or somebody lost their job, and those are very difficult conditions for people. So the people I knew that were struggling were in contact, like, what do I do now? And so again, they hadn't really been applying their practice as much. So then a problem came up like that, and their mind didn't know what to do. And that's going to be our death. That's what's going to happen when you're actively dying. Now, what do I do? So let's make the imprints now if we can, because that's what will be there when you're dying. If you're not consistently putting some imprints in, it'll be harder when we're dying. We won't have that accessible. I just know now, in my own mind, which is very limited, but in my own mind, when I'm very tired, and if I'm doing my practice later in the day and I'm really tired, I'll notice at times where I forget in a certain practice I'm doing, I'll forget for a moment what comes next. And then I think, oh, if I was dying now, this isn't really, I'd really want it to be accessible. So it's a good little lesson for myself of make sure that that's more deeply imprinted in my mind so that it automatically comes up. And that's why we do practices over and over, and why we even do the same practices over and over, so that that's what appears from my conscience, especially if it's a practice you feel visualization of a certain aspect of the Buddha, or a certain thing you're thinking about the philosophy that will benefit you at the death time. Like that can be really, really helpful, but that's where my mind goes. And it's nice sometimes, is I've noticed a little bit, if you remember your dreams, people that dream and remember their dreams, is sometimes people talk with me, or I'll talk to some friends about, you see an imprint in a dream that's very positive, and you think, well, that's nice, or you see some that are negative and think, okay, I need to do more purification so that what is showing up in my more subtle mind, that's like the dreaming mind, more subtle than the kind of gross awake mind, that's what's going to be accessed when I'm dying. So that's what Rinpoche is saying, is you need Rinpoche is saying you need Lojong, you need this kind of turning your thinking upside down, very much turning it upside down from our external world. And we need to start doing it now like that. So he sounded like, I noticed in these teachings post-stroke, that the urgency in his voice, that like I said, it was frightening to some of us initially, of like, wow, better get going. Like, he's not messing around now. There wasn't any more time to waste, you know. And I think this stroke was in, I think it was 2011, 2012, something like 2011, I think it was 2011. So some of the teachings that came after, and then what happened is we had 12 more years with Rinpoche alive before he passed. So not a long time for him to really try to bring it home for us. Like 12 years, he was kind of saying, like, I'm not going to be around a whole lot longer, like, get it now, you know. And so all these teachings you can watch, beautiful, online. So I just want to ask Mal, and going back to our initial, and I'll share my screen. If you remember, this Lojong text is our main one we've been looking at. Okay, I just want to bring up, and this is the one from, let me just second. Turning suffering and happiness. Not sure what's happening. I keep turning mine off, but yeah. Okay, everybody, yeah, it's not echoing now. That's okay. So this is the main one we've been looking at, turning suffering and happiness into enlightenment. Okay, and we were looking through the A through G, which is very practical, I mentioned, which is related to relative truth. Relative truth. So in our conventional realm, we've been looking at using suffering, again, turning you away from samsara's nature, it's all suffering, training and taking refuge, helping us to dispel arrogance and other delusions. Suffering is also a form of purification. Suffering can attract you to practicing more virtue. And then suffering to help you train in compassion. And suffering as a type of seeing the meditation, holding others dearer than yourself. That's I was asking you to, and somebody that was here last week said, I was saying you have 7 days to take one a day. And she said, you could take one a week. You could take one. So spend your time using one a month if you want. And that's what you're really exercising. That's what you're reminding yourself all day long. It's incredibly powerful. But what I want to look at right now is this right here, by means of ultimate truth. By means of ultimate truth. This is the second part of taking suffering as the path. Taking suffering the path. And Rinpoche's saying in the video, you're constantly using your suffering as the path to enlightenment. Okay, we don't like suffering. We turn away from suffering. But here you're looking at, you're happy that you're suffering. So first of all, on the conventional level, the A through G that I just mentioned, on an ultimate level. Okay, so this would go along with study of emptiness, teachings, being in classroom time with teachings on emptiness, reading some of the simpler books first on emptiness, and then moving on to the deeper books on emptiness, learning how to effectively meditate on emptiness, and soaking your mind over and over in that view as much as you can from those experiences, from all that, what I would say, integrated approach with emptiness. And so then what happens is, and from anybody, let me just, this past week, let me review some exercises. So, and I'll talk about there was a practice that was sent out, because some people ask, well, how do I set up a regular practice to get me to be able to really engage in Lojong? Okay, so did everybody get that practice, or you can access it through the OneDrive? And it was a list of different links and documents and little explanation on those, okay? So I put this together a few years ago, because a lot of students ask me this over and over. Now, I am a little bit of a traditionalist, meaning that I really follow the tradition of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. There's a lot of other teachers out there. There's a lot of other ways you can set up a practice. I'm not saying those are wrong, but I just know that what Rinpoche's given us, and I even quoted and put a link into his advice practice. It was kind of sweet because I had set up this thing and then his document came along later of his advice practice, and it was very similar to what I put together. So I felt kind of confirmed that this is a path I have to say that I find this, first of all, it really works for my mind. I'm not any great practitioner or with any great realizations, but it really does shift some things in my mind. Excuse me. But it's something to get something set up. So you may have a different idea about meditation practice, things like that, but try. So there's a lot of things that you recite in this practice booklets I've given people, but it sets up, once again, as I said before we started this class and started this time for me being at the center here, is they all lend support to the practice. They all have a purpose that are given to us from a highly realized being. So in some ways we go to all these other people for advice, people that don't have that level of realization. So again, you have to try it. So I ask people, like, take one of the booklets, one of the practices, and try for 2 to 3 weeks, or spend a month with it. Each page, go slowly through it till you really understand, read the commentaries of what they have, write in the booklet, read whatever it is, and then go through it, spend some time, go through it so that there's more familiarity, right? And then see how it fits with your mind. Does your mind like that? If not, you can shorten things, that's fine. Okay, but there's a way, they're designed for a certain way that really starts to activate your practice. So you can try. You know, jot down any notes, any comments or questions you have on the side, and then I can answer some of those questions, or certainly people here, if I'm not here, other people can also answer. So really helpful. That was one of the things that I sent through. Thank you, Lizette, for sending that out to everyone. And so one of the things we were talking about last week, also looking at the 8 verses of thought training, okay, from Geshe Langri Tangpa, a different verse, we're going to look at some of that again, is we're to think about humility and tolerance, I mentioned. And also in this particular text, it's a huge part of Lojong, humility and tolerance. So I'd ask, how many of these qualities do you feel you have? And can you practice that during the day? Because this is turning from arrogance, and again, Lojong is completely turning everything upside down. So any examples? I'm just curious, how did your week go with humility and tolerance? Because we go out there in the world. And there's kind of like, you know, I just got off a phone call. This is mundane things. It just somehow, when I leave the States and there's some sort of banking thing, or I just off the, you know, it's always harder to do it when I'm out of the States because they always ask you to verify, and it has to come through my phone, and then I have to put in the other SIM card, and you have to, you know, and then sometimes it doesn't work. And then the computer was a little bit off today. So finally they called me, believe it or not, but I realized, and I could watch irritation kind of like, oh, this, like, again, because a lot of people I don't know how it is in the Netherlands, but some of these companies, perhaps from when I was younger, much younger, the people they're hiring don't seem to really know the product and know what they're talking about. So they want to answer, but they give you the wrong information. And this one company, I've talked to maybe 5 or 6 different people, and I've gotten 5 or 6 different answers about the same question. So I noticed, so it frustrates me, because I was always somebody that when I ran centers and everything, I was really into efficiency and really I have a very high bar, you know, if like that. So then I kind of went through the humility and tolerance and was like, I am somebody who's muddling along like everybody else. I am so far from perfect. And, what right do I have to judge this person when I have no idea about their life story and who they are and what kind of day they're having? They're trying to help me. They're trying to do their best. It was really helpful for me because I just had to take it down a few notches in my mind and be like, here we are, these two suffering sentient beings together. I don't really know them. I don't know their mind, but we can get through this together. You can find a way to have a healthy relationship with them. It's there. It's always there, that option. If we choose, if our humility and tolerance allows us to choose that option, right? Any other stories from your week? Did you use humility? Sorry. Mario Lane. I want to get that name right.
Well, it's not so very good example, but with my husband was saying something which I knew wasn't true, and that happens more often, but it wasn't something very important. So at that moment, I thought at the exercise, and I said, "Well, you are right for not having an whole discussion." So that was good, but I noticed I said in such a way that I in reality say you are not right. So I remember also the exercise. I really have to take care to say it on the right way. So
Great. So you were using a little bit of we talked last week, the 5th verse of the 8 verses is offer the victory to others. So you're saying, knowing he was wrong, you decided to offer and just say, you're right.
Yes.
And you were saying you said it in a nice way, or?
No, no, a little bit from, yes, you are right. That way, not, I didn't really give him the victory.
But how, so you didn't really give it to him, but you tried.
I tried. That
Fantastic.
was, but the way I did it was not, I have to.
And what was your result from that?
Well,
like first, what was the outer result?
he accepted it. He did it.
Okay, not much tension between you,
No,
right?
because normally I go in a discussion, so I think he was already happy.
And then what could you say a little bit of what was your inner experience, the inner result? How did you feel?
Yeah, double. I was glad that I remembered the exercise and that I tried it, but I have to try better next time. That was not so useful, but it also went quick, so I did not really have time. Now I can think about it and for next time do it better.
I think it was really great because you actually were able to bring it in. You remembered. I mean, that's a huge part. The beginning is our awareness. I remembered to practice this. So again, when we first practice something we are not used to doing, we're not used to offering the victory. So this is once again from the 8 verses, offer the victory. And let me for a minute, I'm just going to share this briefly. This is not, wait, let me bring up Lama Zobroshi's version of, see if I can find that quickly. I have to open some, I'm just going to open it up. Here we go. Okay. This isn't the one I was looking for, but I'll wait a minute. Here. Yes. Okay, so this, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay. Here's number 5.
Sound.
My sound's been off, is off. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but my sound is off. Something is, okay. This is number 5. When others, because of their jealousy, treat me badly with abuse, slander, or in other unjust ways, may I accept this defeat myself and offer the victory to others. So again, I find this hugely helpful that the beginning is we're practicing something very different than what our external culture often says. So Marie-Elaine, give yourself a break, because when you start practicing something that you're not normally doing, you need to exercise that. And it takes a little while till, first of all, that we find it comes automatically, or that I'm comfortable with it, or that I said it in the right way. Does that make sense? So each of the things you're going to practice, and if you're also looking at the booklets I sent and that sheet of how do I get my practice going, is each of those things is very rough in the beginning. If I'm doing a retreat on a longer tantric practice or something, the booklets can be quite extensive. And so when I start that retreat, if I'm unfamiliar with the practice, it takes me, a few weeks of doing it over and over and over till I feel like, okay, now I know my way around this, like anything we've learned in life, right? So I think it's significant that you caught yourself, and thank you. Is it Foke? Am I saying that right?
About that verse, how I used to interpret it is that with the thought of offering the victory, I try to listen actually behind the words, what's going on. Because if we are showing abusive behavior, it's mostly our mind, at least according to the teachings, what affects us. However, what I'm also struggle with is, what I also try to do then is okay, but what do I feel? So try to do 2 things. Try to listen beyond the words of the other, and try to stay close with my feelings, also acknowledge what happens there. But then I get in a struggle, especially when it, how do you say it? When it comes close to me, and I sort of, a sense of anxiety or something like that comes up. And so when I'm feeling comfortable, I don't mind offering the victory, or whatever that means, and I can listen, I can be there for the other one. But when it comes close to me, I notice a sense of anxiety. And for example, I have something now going on with a neighbor of mine who is, without asking, doing stuff to our wall. And it's a bit of a guy not easy to talk with. So I'm really like, okay, what I'm doing in this kind of situation, because it's, I think, not good to, in a certain way, I abuse now that offering the victory to them, not to deal with it.
Uh-huh. So this is really designed for, thank you for what you're saying. It's all really valuable. It's very much designed to when we're not comfortable with the situation. So it is great when we are somewhat comfortable with the situation that arises, then I can look at my mind, use my awareness, notice my inner responses, try to counter those gently. That's all great. That's all wonderful. But really when it really starts to get tough externally, where all of a sudden I'm uncomfortable, perfect example is the neighbor, then we have to really put it into action. And one thing you could try is, when you said you're not great at talking with the neighbor, or you don't have much of is to find something in common with your neighbor, so that you can slowly, genuinely, if it's natural, to kind of become friendlier with them. That's going to be the key. And that's the key with a lot of this, is the more I can find a way, like whether it's even you know, it has to be a natural thing where I decided to offer them some chocolates. We had some extras and I thought they might like that. Or we got a basket of this kind of fruit and I had some extras and thought they might like them because they're really sweet. And, you know, something genuine you can just share. And you can do it natural if you're sharing a wall, maybe in your garden, and you see them on the other side, or, you know, somewhere it's not something where they feel kind of invaded, like why are they knocking on our door all of a sudden? You want it to be, but that kind of thing then, because then the neighbor might start sharing with you in advance what their plans are for the wall, and suddenly realize that you're there, you know, a neighbor right on the other side of the wall, like suddenly they start thinking about you. So our real reason isn't so that they'll start thinking about me, but it really does help to find a way to create a healthy relationship with them. And so offering the victory can be helpful for that. Again, practicing incredible humility and tolerance. Part of it is you could be tolerant of, so they want to do the thing to the wall. How much does it really matter to us? Am I okay with that? I can let it go. Or if not, you know, what kind of creative, constructive way will I find to create a dialogue with them? You know, so it's very tricky with Lojong of we're really transforming the thoughts. And then here comes the suffering of, you know, the wall, whatever. How do I want to deal with that? And then you could go back through A through G and say, yep, this is samsara's nature. Let me build compassion. If I wanted to do something to the wall and I just thought it was such a great idea and I didn't think of checking with the neighbor, you know, maybe the neighbor's really going through something difficult. So this is like their only avenue of some pleasure for them outside of the house there, you know, and this counters my delusions, you know, all going through all those things. And then, so here is dealing with ultimate truth now. Ultimate truth is the second part of that Lojong text. Ultimate truth. There's really no inherently existent neighbor there at all. This is what emptiness says. Okay. There's no inherently existent wall there, or no inherently existent my wall, or my side of the wall, or my house, my abode, on and on. So how do you want to really explore this nature? And so we'll go back to something I mentioned before with emptiness teachings. Let's analyze your neighbor for a moment. Again, we don't need to know what they look like, but you've got a round, fleshy thing I mentioned here, okay, with the material on the top we call hair, and two round circles of color we call eyes. And there's a hole here we call the mouth that sound comes out of. This is the raw nature of your neighbor. There's a longer torso piece with 4 appendages, the arms and the legs. That's your neighbor. Is this a wall you see over the wall? You can see them?
Well, it's actually the actual wall of my house. So not the garden wall. It's the
Okay.
The
So
literal.
you're sharing a wall with them.
Actually, we don't share. That's the. But that's okay.
Okay. So they're doing something. Okay. So they're doing something to the wall of your house. Okay. They live next door?
Yes, and their garden is, I say next to.
Next to your wall.
Yeah, next to.
Okay. So now look at my wall. Look at the feeling of my wall. Let's analyze. This is really analyzing using Lojong ultimate nature. So I have my wall, my wall. So notice as you say my wall, just saying those words, anybody, you can transfer it into your own language. It could be your car, your bike, your dog, like that, your house. So notice first of all, how it feels in the body, my wall. My wall. And just first we notice discomfort, maybe a gripping at the heart, maybe I get a thing, congestion in my throat, headache. You know, this is a hassle. This is a problem. My wall. The problem is my wall is there, not the neighbor. The problem is I've created this construct in my mind that causes me to place attachment onto it. Doesn't exist that way at all. Doesn't exist that way. And the only reason there's an issue with somebody dealing with some part of your property is it's coming from your mind. This is what Dharma says. This is a different way to look at it. Another way to look at it with Lojong, it's coming from my mind. My mind created this. It created the neighbor. It created my attachment to the wall. And then you want to analyze, there's no inherently concretely existing wall there. It seems strong because it's holding up part of my house. So what happens is we have a mistaken notion of how that wall exists based on our ignorance, based on having a misknowing in our mind from a previous moment of the misknowing. And a moment before that, that I misknew as well. And a moment before that with the ignorance in it that caused me to see things incorrectly, inaccurately. All this holding it in a more important placement on that construct called wall, a thing that supports a house. My mind sees that configuration like that. Okay, a valid basis to be designated wall based on my culture, my language, a valid basis of this construct supporting part of my house and the roof. And then my mind sees that information and labels wall. And then the wall comes into existence, depending on, okay, the fibers in the wall, the atoms in the wall, the construction in the wall, whatever it is, all depending on that, okay? And my nature as a human being in this part of the world with my language labels wall on that configuration, what I'll also call a valid basis of designation. Please think about this. Think about it carefully. Okay, and then I label wall. But what appears instantly back to my consciousness, appears instantly, is not a merely labeled wall. But what appears is a inherently existent wall, existing for all time, solidly, concretely. Okay, so that's mistake number two. And the next part, when I really suffer, it becomes my wall. My wall. So there's the whole problem with ignorance. And that's all that's going on in your mind. And that's what's going on in most of our minds until we have a direct perception of emptiness. This is using Lojong, simply engaging in Lojong, which I want you to do this week using ultimate reality, emptiness. So I want you to look at your problems this week. Look at your problems for the rest of the class. You only have one more week, I realize, so quick. And look at this for the rest of the class of what I'm labeling on things. And when something gets labeled suffering, when manifests as suffering, so then you have your neighbors the same, because you have the fleshy, I mentioned the configuration, fleshy, round, oblong, this and this, and then they've taken some sort of activity. And that activity, because I have a negative karmic seed ripening, that's all that's going on, and is from my mind, a negative karmic seed popped. Okay. Now, why did it pop at that moment? I have no idea. Karma is very intricate. I don't know. Okay, but that got activated, wasn't purified first, it got activated. And now it's just causing me to see my neighbor doing this thing to my wall. And I suffer. I don't like it. Okay, so now you can externally break down that suffering and say, we have things we call, you probably call them here, first world problems, right? Mm-hmm. First world problem is my phone's not doing the thing I told it that I needed it to do. It's not a problem like you're starving. That's a problem. That's a bigger problem. Okay, but we have first world problems. Now, it doesn't mean our properties are not valuable. It doesn't mean we don't take care of our properties, you know, and that we enjoy our properties and we've worked a long time to get this property and we're paying money, all these, nothing, it doesn't mean you don't see that whole circle. But when the suffering comes, here's the neighbor. I want to analyze. There's no concretely existing terrible neighbor there or that's upsetting me. You know, but this is coming from my mind. My mind created to have some problem. I've done this probably in the past, if not this life, past lives, where I've done something probably unknowingly, right? Really unconsciously. Maybe the neighbor's not even aware and just decided I'm going to do this with the wall of the other house because my garden's there and this will look great. And it's just the wall. They don't really care. They never see that side. It's not their garden. Some people do it. They never think about it. You know, and then if you find, so then you want to come back and go, so what do I do? First things we want to do is work with the practice. So you've got relative and ultimate truth. You want to try to work with those internally on your cushion of how you want to work with your mind, all the internal mechanisms, that's A through G, and everything else involved in that. And then I also want to sit on the cushion a little bit and analyze how my neighbor and the wall exist with emptiness. As much understanding of emptiness as you have. If you don't have much understanding and it's new, then you slowly want to work your way in to the thinner books on emptiness. You can go online and watch some teachings on emptiness, then read a little bit, you know, learn how to meditate on emptiness. I think I even put on that list of things, I have an emptiness meditation I listed there that I led. So you could slowly work your way into that. Annie Karen's Lamrim outlines are on that list of how to do a practice. So I gave you a whole range of all kinds of things you can check to slowly start engaging in some of those things. And you have to keep working at it daily. I know it's tiring. I get that. Over and over to analyze. And then the other thing I'd say, so then externally, now you go, so, okay, now what? So you'd say I've done my cushion work, my internal work, but now my neighbor's still there. I want to deal with my neighbor. What do I do? Buy them a croissant, you know, but really but it has to be natural, because you don't want to be like, they'll be like, you know, why are you offering me this? What? So something natural that you feel. It might take you a few weeks to figure out the best way to engage with them. If it's somebody you never speak to, or, you know, but slowly figure out some natural way you can offer something to them, or something very friendly, very spacious, that you think will really make them happy, and see kind of what happens. Or maybe there's a little bit more, you see them, hello, how are you? A little bit friendly chat, you know, initially. That's how we sometimes get to know people, and a little bit like that. Something where they feel safe with you, they like being around you, they like to see you. Then slowly you start. So you wouldn't start the dialogue right away about my wall, because then you're going to put them off. So slowly, as you start this relationship, and you might say, well, I don't have time because they're planting things on the wall, or they're doing this, or they're constructing something. You just gauge what's possible. What do you think?
Well, I must admit, it works in the sense of concreteness. Where I, for myself, am sometimes doubting it, that I go it out of the way because there was another issue, and I said, okay, we will sell it in a couple of months. But then I'm like, okay, where's the boundary? You know, when do you? And then it doesn't need to be, but then I'm a bit like, do I shy away? Do I accept to be the doormat? And is that okay? It sounds strange, because of course in the big scheme of life, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But
So, and if you have a past issue, which sometimes you've had, and it can be, this was the whole thing is, the more you, again, I know I mentioned this before, the more you create healthy relationships with everybody we're meeting, everyone we're meeting, then you often can escape those issues, won't come up later, because the person, you already have a friendship with them. So they're kind of going to be like, if there's something they do for you, or you're fighting over a boundary, or fighting, you know, they may let go and be like, oh no, he's my friend. I won't want to do this to him. So the more you can kind of create that, and it teaches us for future relationships too, because we often come in and we're so full of this bubble alone ourselves. So I never really, all I'm thinking about is what you can do for me, how I can gain from, where the Bodhisattva path is, wow, all these beings to help. Oh my goodness. Like you're not really there. Now, so here's the other thing is, not being a doormat. Bodhisattvas are not doormats necessarily. Again, use your better judgment, but try to bring in some compassionate wisdom. Every decision we make is, you know, should I engage with the neighbor in this thing and kind of say, I'm drawing a line, like, but can I do it with compassion and do it with, you know, a big heart as far as my conversation with them about, you know, I just wanted to explain, this is kind of our wall of our house, and, you know, can we figure out a healthy compromise here, you know, and something like that, where it comes, rather than just stop doing that, where they're immediately put off and afraid. And, so we want to just keep expanding the good heart in those conversations as much as we can. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy because the other thing we'll say was that they're not practicing Lojong, but it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's from our side of how we can create more peace and space and compassion and balance in our minds and hearts. It's like the planet needs us to do it, I really feel, but it's really hard work. It's really hard work. I don't know if that speaks to your issue. So I think at times, and you're always weighing, you're with certain situations, especially the delicate ones, you'd be weighing that little thing that they just said to me, that I can let go of. But the other thing that I heard them talking about, that one I do want to address. So that way you're picking your battles, as we normally say. And relationships do that as well. Some of the best long-term intimate relationships I know where my friends will say they're really choosing their fights, because you're going to have disagreements. But they said, we couldn't fight about everything, but I really, there were certain things I went, that's one of my issues. So I'm going to say something. And then the rest, can you really let it go? Does that make sense? You have to try your best. I know it's not easy, but I guess I feel like that's why Lojong can be so helpful, because I get this tool in my pocket now, so that, because I think a lot of the world engages in, well, excuse me, but that's my wall and I don't like what you're doing and you can't do that. And so then it creates tension and it creates division. So now I've kind of othered the other person, where they're not right, whatever they did is wrong. And then it puts a wedge. So it's harder. It's more like, I'm kind of like, what are you about? What are you interested in? What do you like? Oh, I see you've got a couple kids and I really like that flower in your garden, what you did. And it's all positive, in a genuine way. And then suddenly there's closeness. And then now I can kind of explain that, I'm a little concerned about my wall, but because you're part of my wall, we're together in this now, rather than from the wedge. Does that make sense? But you try, and sometimes we're really going to muck it up, and that's okay too. It's how we learn more. So thank you for saying that. And so another thing to go further, let's say the neighbor. We all have a neighbor in our life, but it may be the boss, and it may be somebody that you ride to work with every day that you just see on the train, on the metro. It could be an old partner in your life, somebody like that. Could be a family member that you really don't get on with. We always have somebody in some sort. There's always someone in our lives like that. So again, engaging from that view of reality, this is ultimate truth. From that configuration, the head, the torso, the limbs, and then sound comes out here. So sometimes when there's somebody really difficult in my life in the past, breaking it down so thoroughly. So really, this is just sound. But immediately you interpret it as something negative. When all that gets activated, my ego's active. I don't like this person. I haven't liked them from beginning this time, is how it feels, right? They're so separate. They're so, but if you can really walk it back, go back a few steps in your mind, some of it is having to be done on the cushion, has to be done there, because it doesn't really get activated externally if I'm not doing that internal work. And then doing that work slowly, right? To then when I come back out with them, really it's just sound coming out after a while, just sound, I know I'm having a really poor interpretation of the sound, and I'm labeling that I really don't like what I'm hearing, and slowly, but it's so interesting because somebody else interprets a sound as something positive. Somebody else labels onto that person. They're happy to see them. So that's why there's no inherently difficult person there. Over and over, you want to work with your mind with that. Am I communicating? Am I making sense? So over and over, there is no necessarily concrete being like that out there, other than what my mind is projecting. What my mind is projecting. Why? because I have a negative karmic seed ripening right now. Negative karmic seed is coming to fruition, and it projects onto that reality, onto that base data or information that's out there, right? Something negative. Somebody else is having a very positive experience. Interesting, just if you take the neighbor you were just talking about, they're very happy with what's going on with your wall, whatever they're doing with the wall. For them, very positive karma ripening. Okay. So this is hard. This is the hard work, is because the rest of the world reinforces ignorance, believes in the concreteness of everything that we experience and see and taste and touch and smell and hear. All the sense faculties coming in and then very much solidifying, concretizing all of that. And that's all we believe in. It always exists, always exists. You know, I just saw today somebody walking down the street here in Amsterdam with a jersey, a top on, a sports jersey. You know how you wear your team, the thing? And it was the sports jersey of my Philadelphia football team, okay, over here. Okay, who happened to win the championship in January, okay? So, which doesn't happen that often. And so I happen to be in Philadelphia for that. And my family goes crazy for them. I don't really like American football. It's very violent. I think it kind of contributes to the big military kind of presence of, you know, and it's very much us or them, and it's very violent of kind of, we're going to kill them and we're going to, the whole thing just, but again, this reinforces. And so I noticed being around in the city, and today it reminded me when I saw this jersey, and I was thinking how concretized people are about their sports teams, right? And this was what was going on. And I was just watching my family going through the thing and where they're planning, where people plan to watch the game and what kind of food they're going to serve and who's coming. And it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing here, football, you know, and whatever sports that people, you know, you see. And so what I was saying to some friends recently in Nepal, when we went to this meeting, we were doing turning around the very large Bodha stupa. If any of you have been to the Kathmandu Valley, there's two glorious stupas, one on each side of the town, but there's stupas all over the place. These shrines, beautiful shrines. Well, one of them is a city block big, and there's shops, Tibetan shops around it, and you walk around. It's an amazing place. It's one of my favorite places. And so we were walking around, turning around, and I said, it's so amazing to have this shrine to do practice. And in the morning and in the evening, the whole Buddhist community comes out, and that's their exercise. They walk around. You can get your friend and walk around and talk. People have their rosaries, their malas, right? That's what people do. It's an activity. And when the weather's good and people come out and they have their umbrellas if it's hot, and they have when it's raining, and tons of people out there going around the shrine. And I said, it's so nice because here you have a shrine. And in my country, the shrines are football stadiums. Those are the shrines. You know, there's no real value of practicing Dharma there. You know, so when you just think about like just a configuration set up from my mind of what it imputes on something. So it's really to be a bodhisattva warrior in our cultures, which I think all of us are, everybody here. You've associated with centers, thank you. You're trying to practice Dharma, thank you. And you're trying your best. And we are really the warriors, going to war only with our delusions, not other people, right? Not other people that like other sports teams, but we're doing it for all these beings, regardless of what they like, what they don't like, if they like you, if they don't like you, for all these beings we're there for. So it's really moving. And a lot of times you feel like you are walking up the mountain, a very difficult, steep path. And you're wondering, you know, why is everybody streaming down the mountain, right? It's kind of like that sometimes when you become a Dharma practitioner. So that's why it's great that we're together and we have centers and try our best like that. So again, I want you to analyze this week, analyze that difficult person from the view of ultimate reality, of emptiness. can be very helpful. Analyze when they open this and something comes out, look what you imputed on that. And look how sometimes negative it is. Like, oh, you know, even you sound like this sounds raspy. And then you meet somebody else and they go, oh, it was so nice what he just said. Sometimes I laugh when, you know, and we were just at this meeting of our organization, and I was there with a very, very close friend. She's a nun who runs our center in San Francisco. And we've been friends for many years. And so we sat next to each other in the meeting. And then we go back, we also roomed together for 3 weeks. So we went back to the room. And then it was interesting. She would have a comment about that session of the meeting. She'd say something. And then it was interesting. I had a totally different view of what she said. You know, she'd say, oh, this was like this. And then I had a totally different take of, so it's often like that. There's nothing swimmingly concrete, but that's what our ignorance projects on it. Does that make sense to everybody? So try your best this week, really working with the Lojong of that. Just watch the ultimate reality. It's very difficult. It's harder to work with, but that's where we really have to go. Really have to go. So I want to, oh, sorry, is there anything in the chat? Use your current activities like building. Can you say a little bit more? Oh, Vitas, he had to leave. Oh, sorry. Okay. I don't really understand his, but in fact, you can use your current activities like building a house, working on projects and so on as a daily practice too, because you face the real issues like your negative emotions and so on. Well, we can use all of daily life, I would say, in general, if that's what he's saying. Like, we're constantly using every experience of just general daily activities. You're also finding if there's a more fluid way of going through things rather than it can be, I guess, more tiresome. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying with that. But of course, using current activities all the, because your mind goes up and down with every current activity. There's certainly a neutral place as well that you're just at work, doing your work. But then you watch a little pop comes up. Suddenly something came in or a call came in or somebody you have to deal with and suddenly you don't like, or suddenly you have a lot of attachment to that person. So you can, it's always somewhat up and down generally. Oh, so she's on a retreat. Yeah, I thought she had to do it. Okay, she's going to watch the rest. Okay. Those
Also
are
had
questions.
one question.
Yes, please.
So I was also wondering if you can kind of use these Lojong techniques on, you know, more discomfort and like headaches or fatigue or kind of other kinds of suffering, and also this emptiness, because I feel like, you know, for me, like the wall is easier to see the emptiness than, you know, your mental state.
Right. The mental state, you use it all the time. The mental state, definitely. So you'd also see that you have a headache pop up, result of a negative karmic seed. But the other thing is maybe it pops up as a headache because maybe I've purified some other things and how I look at it, as opposed to it could have popped up as a brain tumor and I'm not experiencing something like that. So let me just clean it out as a headache right now. And it's only coming from my mind. It's only coming from a negative imprint of my mind. Where is the actual concrete headache? Can you find that? You might say, well, it's here. It feels like it's here. What's actually there? So if you really want to go in here and say the headache, I tend to get headaches over here. There's some hair on the side of my head. Okay. Underneath that is skin. Below that is going to be my scalp. Then I've got my skull. So you'd have to take, and there's atoms made up of all those things are made up of atoms. So with emptiness, you're asking to say, well, which one is exactly one with the headache? And there's only one headache that I'm experiencing, but there's all these different components here already. If I just took that, all of them made up of atoms. So which atom is the headache? And suddenly the headache often for people starts dissolving. So you could definitely do that. Mental states. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. But I kind of, you know, even if you view it as a mental state and then you kind of see the emptiness, it can still be there, right? Is that...
It can still be, well, there's a conventional reality that if you're saying somebody's depressed or anxious, they're definitely feeling that's going on at the time. And yet it lacks any concreteness because it changes. Depression, anxiety change all the time. They're not always in people's minds. Even with people chronically depressed, often there was a time before it started, you know, and there's often that in the depression it changes. That's why there's no concreteness to it. You could look at things like that. Does that help a little bit? You have to keep thinking about it though, but that's a good question. And then, so that's a bit relative reality. I want to go on just for a moment to explore the rest of this text. That one. Where's my other text? Just find that text again. Okay. And then also when you think about, he says, and let me just share the screen for a moment. By means of ultimate truth. This is the drawing of the mind to supreme peace and dwelling there by the knowledge of stopping the arising of the four extremes, extremes of like nihilism, for instance, nothing exists. Like that's not emptiness, okay? That's one extreme. Another extreme would be reification or concretization, the way we normally see things. Everything exists inherently. That's wrong. So they're just talking about taking us away from these extremes. Dwelling in that empty nature in which there's no suffering or unfavorable circumstances, in which even the names of suffering cannot be found. So this is when you really focus on emptiness in meditation, but then you come out because it helps you then see my mental states or the boss or the wall, those things really, the more you sit in meditation with it, then the more it's apparent out there that things are empty or lack that inherent nature. Even when you come out of that state, he goes on, a supreme peace, the way in which suffering arises in your mind is not the same as before when fear and apprehension arose. These you must overcome by observing them as being hollow, merely words. So it's really helpful to, it's just nice how he says that, to consider. So spend some time this week really looking at whatever understanding you have of emptiness, or look at notes you've had on emptiness and apply it to whatever's arising for your mind this week, especially things you would label suffering, pain, any delusions arising, any kind of misery that's surfacing. See if you can transform that. And then ways of taking happiness as the path by means of relative truth. So we want happiness. We really want happiness, but we attach to happiness too much. So when happiness or objects that cause happiness come, if you slip under their control, okay, then the delusions get activated, okay, and they obstruct the path. So this is a way to lessen the attachment to happiness, to lessen our attachment to happiness and be a little bit more, as Rinpoche would say over and over, that welcoming of the suffering from the first part, more welcoming. I realize there's value. There's value. And I said something to somebody recently. What was I? And I have a friend that's been a long time practitioner, much longer than me. She's a great yogini, a lot of retreat. She's really amazing. I'm hoping to see her this summer. And she's very inspiring. And some years ago, I was really going through something at a center and I really label it suffering, you know, and then she said, but we need to suffer. We really need to suffer. That's the path to clean. That's it. And so it really helped me every time I think about that I'm going through something difficult. And I'm like, I need this. You know, so there's a little, I have to say there's some pleasure in it. And when I'm not really, if you find your own spiritual path, some of you might have gone to Lunan for other retreats. maybe with Venerable Gendon or other teachers. And there might have been something else going on that weekend or that week that you wanted to do, but then you went out there. And sometimes the session's about to start, and you have that, some people have the feeling, oh, the session's gonna start. Like I'm in my room doing this other thing, but now I have to go to the session. And there's little turning things and there was something, I can't remember what I was doing recently. We were something with a Dharma project and we were working really, really hard. And then I know when I get a break and I went back to Philadelphia, where I'm based part of the time, there's a little bit of a release from, I have a little bit more space there at times, downtime. And it's a time I kind of recharge, but it's a different recharging than retreat. And there's a part of my mind that gets a little lazier, and I'll kind of say, well, I don't know if this is the best thing. I don't want to do this for too long because my mind gets a little lazy, And then last summer, I was fortunate. Last summer in autumn, I had 4 months retreat, 4 to 5 months retreat. And it was very hard. And retreat's often a very favorite time for me, but some of the hardest work I've done. And so through that, I always feel like I'm really going for it here in this time, but it's hard work. It's harder. So I think if we strike a balance where you have the times you push through your Dharma practice and really engage in something, check your mind. How does it feel? Is there meaning for me? Am I happy internally? Do I feel like I'm really right in the right place? Or if not, make some adjustments, and then notice the other life, because we do need breaks. When I go back, am I my mind getting too lazy? Am I getting a little negligent with these other habits I'm doing that are really not very beneficial? How does that feel when I'm doing them? Does that make sense? So check your own situation. You can always fine tune what's going to make you a little happier when you go to sleep at night. So what'll be helpful is it'll make you happier when you're dying. It'll make you happier when you're dying. So what I didn't go through is, of the 9-point death meditation, we talked about the 3 reasonings under the first heading, death is certain, but the second heading is the time of death is uncertain. Time of death is uncertain. And this has 3 reasonings. And the first one is we live in a world system with an unfixed lifespan. That's planet Earth. And we know people die at all ages. People die at all ages. The second one is there's a lot more things that are contributing to your death than keeping you alive, like bacteria and viruses and other illnesses, natural disasters, accidents, war, violence, on and on. Many, many things contributing to death than really supporting life. And the third part is the body's very delicate. Body's very delicate. So some little cut that you get on your toe could create a huge infection that could kill you. Some people go in the hospital for surgery of a minor thing to be fixed, and they die in the operating room. It happens all the time. So as many things as the body really has its own little unique balance like that. Those are the third section. And the first section, when you really spend time meditating on, there's no power in the universe that can stop death from coming, right? We're every moment closer to death, and we don't get a lot of time of formal practice. Those 3 reasonings lead you to a resolution. I'm going to practice. I will practice. The third 3 reasonings, under the time of death is uncertain, lead you to a resolution. I need to practice now. And then the third section, the last 3 reasonings, are under a heading that what benefits you the most at the death time is your spiritual practice, your Dharma practice. So your possessions are of no help to you when you're dying. You can't take them with you. While they can afford you possibly more comfort of your body when you're dying, like if you have more money and you want to hire round-the-clock care, and you want to die at home, and you want to get the proper bed and the proper things like that, helpful, right? But I know people that have had every perfect physical comfort for the body, and their minds are miserable. So it really didn't help. Second part are family and friends. Do they help you when you're dying? Your family and friends? What do you think? Family and friends helpful when you're dying? Anybody online or here? What's your experience?
I have no experience with dying, but.
What do you think?
It might be helpful if they are there. I think, but you also can't take them with you.
You can't take them with you or family and friends. And even if you both die in a car accident, I hope you don't, it's your experience alone, the dying in the car accident, what happens with your mind. You're not going to experience what they experience. You might have a last look of horror at the person next to you, but then you go through the doors and that's your own experience. So we have attachment to the people we love, friends and family we're attached to. That can create a lot of problems if they're around you when you're dying. Okay. There are also family and friends that may be, I've seen this happen because I do a lot of hospice work, that are leaning over you, telling you not to die because they're attached to you. They're crying over you, sometimes wailing over you. Not really helpful for your mind when you're dying. And you can't prevent yourself from dying. You may be very ill. This could really disturb any kind of internal peaceful experience you like to have. Now, if they are friends that know your Dharma practice and they're doing some Dharma practice around you, that can be enormously helpful. So that's one way friends and family can help. But ultimately, in the grand scheme, it's your dying experience alone, like that. Are you ready? Is your mind ready for that experience? We're going to talk about that on the weekend. And then the last one is your body's of no help when you're dying. It's usually the reason that you're dying is part of the reason. And they say when the karmic seeds in your mind wear out, you die. Some illness will manifest. Something will happen. The karma, it really comes from your mind, but the body often may be riddled with old age, sickness, something like that. So it can't really support, can't sustain. And sometimes, you know, when I really thought about hearing about the merit you need to, or merit to continue living, you need seeds of that to continue living. And there were a couple of people I knew that they found no cause of death. They died. One of them died at 50 years old, a nun at one of our retreat centers. She died there. They found her after a couple of days in her cabin. They could tell because there was some food left outside she never brought in. And when they found her, the county officials, this was in the United States, they said they needed to do an autopsy because they weren't sure what happened, and they took the body. And she was really an amazing nun. When I knew her, she to me, she seemed very special. And so they never found the cause of death, 50 years old. So it's just the seeds written, maybe finished whatever she needed to finish in this life, whatever, again. So are you ready for that experience? When whatever supports, and this leads you to a resolution. The third three reasonings leads you to a resolution. Not only will I practice now, but I will practice well, so that Dharma, rich, consistent Dharma practice is what will sustain me into a better rebirth, like that, on my path to enlightenment, to awakening. The 9-point death meditation. Something else you can, and it's in Annie Karen's Lamrim outlines. You can refer to it there again to refresh yourself. And so that's something else I'd love you to think about. If you're not used to those, learn those this week. Get familiar with those, spend a little time thinking about those. And if you want, come this weekend and we'll do some more meditation on that. Any questions right now? Yes.
About 9-point death meditation. And for example, if you are also exploring the daily Shakyamuni practice.
Yep.
How would you embed that? Would you embed it in the part of the foundation of all good qualities, or?
Yes. So great question, great response. Because this is what I feel like I feel like more and more, and it's something Venerable Gendon is also interested in. I was so happy to hear him contact me about this is if we really want to practice and get free, and some of this I relate to on that program, on the daily practice thing that was sent out, is, and I can speak a little bit, this is a little bit more, intermediate class, is, finding an authentic teacher that, and someone who has high realizations. I know I've mentioned this before, that you can really start to study and just, you may not see them every day, but they might come through the center once in a while. Then you can study with other levels of teachers and really start to engage in a practice. But it has to also include Lamrim meditation, which is the 9-point death meditation is part of that. So a basic Guru Yoga practice, like Foke just mentioned, the daily Shakyamuni Buddha practice booklet, which is in that list that I gave you. It's your basic Guru Yoga. It's fantastic. A lot of other practices. And you come to in there is the foundation of all good qualities. And that is a Lamrim prayer. And then what you do is whatever Lamrim you're meditating on, whatever part that you're meditating on at the time, you read the verses to that verse. Then you stop at that verse and then you do whatever meditation you want to do for at least 15, 20 minutes. You can, if you have more time, do longer. Okay. And then when you finish, you continue to read the rest of the prayer, and then you dedicate and finish the meditation session. So slowly, what I'm be really interested, and I know they're doing some Lamrim, they have another night a week that Thursday night, maybe they're having a small Lamrim group to meditate on the Lamrim, is what we need to learn to do. This was something Lama Zopa Rinpoche really stressed. And it's one thing a lot of Westerners are leaving out of their practice. We don't really know how to effectively meditate on the Lamrim. We find it boring. But once you start to access what you're doing analytically, is you're coming from every angle on that point. So if I say death is certain, and you take the first point, 15 or 20 minutes at least. So there's no power in the universe. We'll do some of it this weekend that will stop death from coming to me, I would just think. And I go, so I think that over and over, I'm definitely going to die. And you'd say, but it's morbid. But this starts to work on the mind slowly. It chips away. It really, the analytical thing is not just intellectual thinking. Intellectually, I know I'm going to die, okay? But it starts working where it's moving an intellectual understanding here to here, where there's an experiential at the heart level. So there's an experience that you have, an aha moment, a juicy, you're in the meditation, and then what you're doing is you're thinking of quotes you might have read, some scriptural references that may have moved you, and it might just be a 4-line reference, and you're just going over and over that again in your mind. And it's like a ram against the door over and over till it breaks through the door. You're thinking of something you heard in a class, something you read in a book. And then with this one, that there's no power in the universe, right? Who do you know? Who's the wealthiest person you know? They can't bribe their way out of death. They haven't figured out a way. People have gone to the moon. So they walked on the moon, they died. That didn't stop them from dying. Who are the brightest people we know on the planet? So Einstein died. All the most incredible philosophers, scientists, Stephen Hawking died. Geniuses on the planet, they died. People who created the most incredible music that we know didn't figure a way out of death. So you go, but you'd slowly unfold this, unpack it, and you think he died, she died, she was incredible, she died, she discovered that, she died, he died. They all, nobody sorted it yet. Over and over in the back of your mind, I'm definitely going to die. Death is certain. It's definitely coming. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. Definitely coming. And then you think, same in the meditation. 100 years, 100 years, nobody in this room will be around. Sorry, nobody in the Zoom room. I'm sorry to break it to you. I don't think so, but I think we'll all be gone. 100 years, all these people gone. Everybody you know now, gone. Okay, of a certain age. Everybody Oh, so you want to go through any current lists, so just over and over you can think of, and that's what you're doing. You're analyzing from every angle. You poke it, every angle, and all of a sudden you get a moment. You'll be like, I'm going to die, and then you want to hold. You want to take then the other part of a meditation, shine, calm abiding. Okay, and I want to take whatever focus, concentration I have on that experience. I'm going to die, and I'm going to hold it there as long as I can. That moment, that experience, that feeling, to deepen that experience. As long as I hold it, right? Then it's going to fade again. Then I go back and I analyze more quickly again to get to that. Okay. So initially you have what's called a contrived realization. You're forcing it over and over. I'm getting to a juicy place. I force it, but it fades away. And then eventually through the realizations, you have what's called an uncontrived realization of that topic. Stays a little bit more rooted in the mind, but you have to keep doing the meditations regularly. They really impact the mind in an incredible way. And all your problems get solved there in the Lamrim topics. So one friend of mine, and then I'll stop there, said, he's a great meditator, a monk for years, wonderful meditator. And some years ago, we were talking about the problems and retreat, and we've done some retreat, and then he met these practitioners from another lineage or something, and then they were on retreat and they had all these books, and he had some Lamrim books, and they said, well, what do you do? You're alone, and what do you do when you have a problem at this certain place on retreat? And he said, well, I have the Lamrim. It all gets sorted there. So something to think about. And again, the Lamrim, it's nice, reading different ones, because some of the older ones were like maybe older style of some of the examples they'd use. So it's helpful. Like there's Lamrim commentaries by Geshe Zopa. Geshe Zopa was an incredible professor that lived in the States for 40 years and taught at one of our universities. A Tibetan master, amazing, one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachers, Geshe Lundrup Zopa. And he's the one that taught every summer at his center in the States commentaries on the long treatise of the Lamrim, the longest rollout. So there's these 5 maroon books, thick books, but they're commentaries. You can read them, and they're very good for Westerners because he gives all examples for our types of culture. Very, very helpful for the mind. Like that, just to give you other things to think about in meditation. Does that help? But it's something I want to say to everybody, because this is what we need to be doing, right? This is part of what has to be incorporated into our practices. So I list all that on the sheet like that. So certainly try it, ask me, and then we can do some retreats together to learn how we do that. And it's nice that they're doing that here on Thursday nights, I think. Thank you so much. Any last questions? Or anyway, we're going to stop there, and we're going to finish with we'll finish the text next week, and we'll look more at the 8 verses as well. So try your exercises. You'll get an email this week. And let's go back to our dedication prayers. And may we dedicate whatever positive energy we've created from this time together. We just bring up our prayers. Let's dedicate to our using whatever we can take from this course, trying to practice Lojong and learning more about the different Lojong texts to incorporate them into a practice. But in general, setting up and really cultivating that rich, consistent practice that will include Lamrim meditation to help us move along this path to enlightenment as quickly as we can, so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings. May whatever virtue I've collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and may it especially cause the essence of perfect, pure Losang Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. Short mandal offering. Excuse me. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Yedam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Nirata Yami. Bhagavadi Nyaguruta Lama Sangye Drogyone Drowa Chikyam Malu Dei Sala Marsho Janjo Sanjo Rinpoche Mage Panam Ge Gyoje Ge Panyam Pame Bayi Gone Gondu Washo. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Excuse me. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, may bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization, may be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I promise to pray, all those whose names have been given to me, may be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. I'd also like to really dedicate for all those all over the planet who are tremendously suffering right now, especially all the war-torn places. May they be eased of this suffering instantly, completely. May all the wars all over the planet be ended instantly. May all the minds of all the leaders of totalitarian regimes be turned and merge immediately with bodhicitta and emptiness. Let's dedicate with emptiness. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. The long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrei Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And the long life prayer, swift return prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. This is the one by His Holiness. There's actually 3 prayers, but we'll do this one. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you next week for our last course on this at this particular time. And then tomorrow night, there's an intro to Tantra, a couple more weeks. And then this weekend, the last weekend course I'll do here until September, and then the Lunan retreat will be in June. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your week with Lojong.